Before I started studying photography, I had visions of being a sort of photographer that travelled the world and, made pictures of far-flung places. And Dartmoor, I always saw it as being too familiar to get excited about. Convincing myself, it's so boring here, there's nothing to photograph. How can I feel as though I'm out having this huge sort of creative epiphany when I'm 3 minutes from my local pub? I never thought that I would make work that was so significant for my career 20, 30 minutes from my front door. Dartmoor's got two sides to it. There's the vast, open, bleak moorland of North Dartmoor, which is just rolling hills of grass and bog with granite outcrops. And then you've got the beautiful, picturesque, quintessentially English landscape of East Dartmoor. So when I first started becoming interested in photography, I was into the grand vistas, the sort of single beautiful landscape photographs where you abide by these rules of composition and things, and Dartmoor was the place where I taught myself to do that. When I went to art college, I started learning more about project work and photographers who can sort of weave narrative through landscape and have a more contemporary angle, so using the landscape to talk about something greater than just how pretty it is. I went into the equipment centre and they showed me this Gandolfi 5x4 sort of mahogany and brass field camera. So I took it up to an old firing range on the Willsworthy firing area, set up the 5x4, and within about 20 minutes was hooked. So second year of art college, I began the militarization of Dartmoor, the first series of photos that I'd worked on, kind of driven by this idea of an area that is so beautiful that it's designated national park status, yet has this second life as a training area for war. I think it taught me the importance of storytelling through a series of images and narrative, and being able to talk about things that are unfolding within the landscape rather than the subject being the landscape itself.
What's it like to be back here in this area? How long has it been?
Oh man, I've not been up on the ranges for a fair few years now, and not a lot has changed really. The colour of the door's different, and that's pretty much it. But it still has that sort of eeriness and that kind of bleakness that I was drawn to, especially on a day where the wind's up like this and looking out over the moors behind you.
And did you think after wrapping this work up that you'd do more work in Dartmoor?
No, definitely not. I never wanted to photograph Dartmoor for this project. I was just kind of restricted. I didn't drive, I didn't have any money, I was a student, so I was kind of forced my hand really into making work on my home, at home. And as far as I was concerned, that was it. I was going to graduate and I was going to travel the world and never photograph Dartmoor again, Not everyone was as interested about military observation posts as I was, so kind of retrained as a studio photographer for a little bit while I figured out what my next move was. It was whilst I was working full-time in the studio that I went on to make the work about mountain bothies called Black Dots. And that was another 3-year project, which really, there are similarities. It's small buildings in big places, but also introduced the element of portraiture and still life to go a little bit further into telling the story of something that's happening within the landscape and the community of strangers that dwell in these remote shelters. It also picked up a couple of awards, one of which being the Royal Photographic Environmental Bursary, which then funded the beginning of Carpathia, which is my ongoing work in Romania. which again is still about interaction with landscape, it's still about place, but it focuses more on rewilding initiatives in the southern Carpathian Mountains. Something I was aware of coming out of studying photography was losing momentum. I was terrified of losing momentum. And I'd put the militarization work out, get on to doing black dots. Black dots was finished, I quit my job, I went on and made Carpathia, and I felt like I was moving in the right direction. And then suddenly, you know, the COVID-19 pandemic hits, and I'm instantly thrown back onto Dartmoor and told I can't leave. I do find it super interesting how there were these little pockets of sort of ancient woodland. There's actually 3 that across the whole of the moor. I mean, you know, man, this is the first time I've actually been here despite living so close, but the time of year, the light that we've got, sort of, you know, hoping to find something to sort of set the camera up and photograph here. Depending how dark it is inside the wood, you know. This is actually a really nice composition. The conditions are horrendous for it, but like the oaks kind of frame that hill perfectly. And I just think with a little bit more atmosphere, a little bit more mist, just to soften out all this clutter, and a bit of light shining on that back hill, it'd be a really beautiful photograph. But today isn't that day, Kyle. I don't photograph a lot for this reason, because 9 times out of 10 I'll be set up just like this and the conditions just won't play ball, you know. But the only way to sort of overcome that is just to keep coming back to the same place, you know. So most of my time is spent on Dartmoor trying to find compositions that might work in the future. Like, very rarely do I go out on a morning to take pictures on Dartmoor and come back with a picture, you know. The pictures that I make have been made because I've already scouted that location out and I know it's going to work if certain conditions align. And then I'll keep my eye on, look out the window, keep my eye on the weather forecast, and then if the conditions are doing a certain thing, I'll look through my notes and go, oh, you know, that place will work really well now, and then I'll head out. But yeah, man, like stuff like this is super important to do. And just keeps your eye in as well, gets you used to framing, working with the camera, you know, and just being outside. Worst case scenario, you've had a lovely walk. You know, there's nothing wrong with that, really. If you think about why we got into photography to begin with, I didn't pick up a camera for the first time and go, this is my career. It started as something fun, and it's okay to embrace that sort of quite childish approach now. I just began making the most out of those daily walks that we were allowed to do during the lockdowns, and sort of started re-photographing Dartmoor again out of kind of, there were no other options. I'm very lucky that I live where I live and that I do have a national park on my doorstep, but always found it hard, especially at the beginning of the most recent work, trying to get excited about a place I knew so well. But then the collaboration presented itself, which allowed a new dimension and a new way of thinking about the landscape. So Crucible, it's a collaboration with Gary Fabian Miller, who is a cameraless photographer, and he's one of the sort of pioneers of cameraless photography. And we began talking about this idea of creating a series of landscapes that help to describe the place that has been the site of all of Gary's artworks for the last 3 decades. You know, having his pictures of an imagined place paired with mine, which are more descriptive landscapes that help to situate those works within a real landscape. Coming away from the recent work, I realised the importance of being patient, not putting that weight on myself of having to come away every day with a picture just because I've taken the camera out. putting more emphasis on the enjoyment of just being in the environment and walking, and the photography became this kind of secondary thing. I never thought that I would make work that was so significant for my career. This is that classic Dartmoor terrain. This is elephant grass, they call it. Going out into your local area, it doesn't mean that you have to go out and make your best photograph you've ever made. Enjoy all of the other stuff that comes with working as a photographer. If you're struggling to feel motivated or can't think of an idea, just being receptive to the sights, the sounds, the people, the place, all of that other stuff before you even got your camera out of the bag is going to make you take better pictures. Through photographing Dartmoor for these last two projects, it's definitely shaped my career, but I was treating Crucible very much as a farewell to my sort of photographic relationship with this landscape for now. I'm always going to have a relationship with it because my family are here, you know, and I lived here, it's home. But if the Crucible pictures are the last pictures I take of Dartmoor, then I feel as though I've done it justice.